Llegando a la nueva conferencia, miren el lugar y somos poquitos de prensa, ¿verdad?
40 years ago, the world was forever changed when the digital frontier opened for the first time. In celebration of this groundbreaking film, D23 Expo is proud to present Back to the Grid, 40 Years of Tron, presented by Enterprise. To take us on this digital journey, please welcome your hosts, Juju Green and Mike Bonifer, to the stage.
Yo! Hey! What's going on, everybody? Greetings, program. Greetings, everybody. You couldn't help yourself with that one, huh?
I had to do it. I had to do it.
Oh my God. So
You got your gear?
Yeah, I got some gear. I got this nice.
Is that what it does?
Yeah. Oh wait.
I heard-
See what it does.
I heard you were gonna have gear.
Hold on, I got some
Brought
gear. Hold up.
I brought some gear.
Hold up.
Somebody gave me some Tron
What
glasses.
you got? What you got?
But you can't see anything, but they're perfect as headgear. So I'm gonna wear this as my.
No, I think you
my
look good.
is this okay?
No, it's great.
Show of applause. Okay, good. But you know what? You love to wear memorabilia.
I do.
I heard that. We heard the rumors. So
I say it all the time.
Donald Kushner, the producer of Tron, is going to come out here with a one-of-a-kind piece of memorabilia. Donald,
What?
come on, yeah, Donald Kushner.
No, I think the person who described it best was Mr. Taylor when he said, "This is the film that's gonna melt the Naugahyde off the lazy boys of America."
I'm gonna use that from now on, by the way.
Well, it was, let's face it, it was so overwhelming that when it was proposed, and I happened to be at the studio working on another movie, and so I was at the right place at the right time. And I remember Tom Wilhite, who was head of production, came in with Steven Lisberger and said, "You have to meet this guy. He's going to do Tron." And I thought, okay, sure, why not? And then he began to speak in a language I had no idea what he was talking about. Something about backlight compositing and cell flopping. And I was so naive, even though I worked on some pretty major films, but I thought cell flopping meant you put the cell down and then you flop it. And then you shoot it again. Why? I literally did not know, but I was taught early on, if you're offered a job, always say yes. Never admit that you don't know what the hell you're doing, because most likely you're not the only one. And this was such a learning experience. We went through so many different versions of how will we do it? Should we do it this way? Should we do it? I even made up a kind of a little how-to. We're going to shoot it against blue screen, of course. Yeah, why not? Well, no, that didn't work. Everything didn't work, but then it all kind of came together out of desperation. And I think that's what I learned, that Tron had a life of its own, and it couldn't be denied, and it was up to us to shepherd, all of us, to shepherd this thing and make it work. And I tell you, there were a lot of sleepless nights. And there was a lot of, okay. At one point, I'll tell this quick story, then I'll stop. We had so much work to do with the cells and the different exposures on this codeless 16 by 20 codeless animation cells, basically, but they were film. And I remember we all got together, I think it was everybody up here, and we said, how are we going to do this? And we spent the morning coming up with different ways. And one of my genius suggestions is that, well, we'll need, 30, 40, 50 people. We'll go out to high schools and to colleges, and we'll pay them a pittance, and they'll come in and they'll do the whole thing, write up the exposure sheets. We'll tell them what an exposure sheet is, and then somebody said, "Can they go to the bathroom?" I said, "Okay, yeah. Well, they're going to get hungry. How are we going to feed them?" They can bring their own damn lunch. I mean, we're not paying them to. Eventually, it all just kind of fell apart, and we realized it was dumb.
Okay, I gotta ask, because I really love hearing the story of just the behind the scenes and making this. So you guys have crafted an entire world that has never been done, that has never been seen before, in a way that has never been done before, right? And you touched on this a little bit, but I want to talk about just, was there any moments where you felt the pressure was on? If this doesn't work, you know, not only do we have to explain it, we have to execute this. And what you're saying right now sounds insane, and I can tell you see it in your eyes. And I want to know, like, what are those moments that made you go, could we pull this off?
Well, first of all, I want to say the whole project, it all exists because of Steven Lisberger. We have to give him a full. The man is a genius, and the concept was brilliant, and Donald and the fact that they were able to convince the studio to do the picture was truly amazing in that time. But going back to your question, there were moments along the way. We had to put together a trailer for NASA, which is the National Association of Theater, or NATO, National Association of Theater Owners, which was in Vegas, and we had to take an example of what the film was going to look like. All studios do, and that's when the theater chains make a decision what films they're going to carry for that summer, that year. So we had to get that done, and we had to push all the processes through and make them work the first time. And for those of you who are not familiar, computer simulation was, as I mentioned, featured in Tron. But the other part was the fact that the way we processed the live action footage of characters in costume like the one David's wearing, to turn those into glowing characters and to make the backgrounds. And I've got to say, one of the most amazing things in the film that was done well, that we had to test at that point, is the effects animation, which was done every streak of a disc, every explosion. Yeah, they were all of that was hand-drawn with airbrush grads and backlit. You know, John Shealy there is holding up.
This is one of the cells.
That's a cell right there.
Look at that.
John, use your mic and tell us some of the problems that Richard and Harrison saddled you and Glenn with, that you had to figure out.
Are those original cells?
I had been doing backlit techniques at Robert Abel and Associates, and we rolled those techniques into Tron.
Yeah, I think the thing that Richard's referring to, we all thought when we were making the film, well, it wasn't going to become an interpretive dance piece. It was going to be a movie. It was my idea. We all thought we could do digital characters very imminently. Richard had an awesome test of a juggler that became the logo of ILM, but live action was nowhere near happening in CGI, human characters. And Bruce Logan shot this beautifully fine-grained, large format 65 film, enlarged out onto 12.5 by 20 Codalist, just gorgeous. And Disney had the experience. Harrison brought that to the picture in the legacy of the studio of being able to composite live action into animation, going back to many number of films, but Mary Poppins, the Pete's Dragon shortly before us, but they had the tools for this and the technology established in the traditional means of photographic compositing. And Glenn and I worked on the animation stands and compositing that and coming up with the approach to it. And yes, Juju, we had to ramp up like crazy several times, just ramp up. Yeah. And Richard brought together brilliant teams from outside. Harrison had astonishingly capable, experienced teams at Disney. It was a real merger of an old and new team. And it felt to me then like AI feels now. You know, we were on fire with what we were doing, and it wasn't just problems.
We
solved
knew
those problems.
we knew we were inventing what we were doing as we went along, and that was the thrill of
That's
it.
the cool part.
But the Glenn down there was our premier animation cameraman, and to understand those cells that John held up, each one of those went on a light box with registration pins, and there were 18 animation cameras in all, and every frame, 24 frames a second, had to be exposed to film, no digital. Every frame of Tron was shot on film, including the computer simulation, where film was looking at a high-resolution monitor. But Glenn, as an animation camera man, had to change exposures, filters, artwork, all of these different steps per frame for, you know, my God,
82 was the highest number.
82 passes?
Yeah, 82 passes. The shot where Sark walks
one
into the
frame.
control room and plugs himself in, and the MCP shows up. That one shot, walks in, plugs in, MPC. It took a week to shoot, 82 passes, and it was literally running 24/7. Each shift would come in, where are you? I'm on frame 32. Okay, pick up. The scariest was frame pass 82. So please don't let me be the one to mess up. Please. Full week.
Well, that's the thing about making the film. I mean, we basically, it was a one-off, handmade. No film will ever look like that again. If you look at frames from all the films that were made that year that I mentioned on a light table, they're all noir. They're all dark green and gray and blue, and then there's this fluorescent glowing frame that's Tron.
Of the film industry.
Some of the great ones always get ignored.
Yeah, so explain, please.
Yes. So the process by which films are nominated for Academy Award by the Academy is that the films that are being considered all go to the Academy Theater, and 10 minutes of the film are cut together, and then a spokesperson stands up and answers questions from the audience, and in that audience are 40 people from the Academy who eventually vote and narrow it down to the 3 finalists. Well, and that's a process called a bake-off. I was the spokesperson for Tron, and when all the other films were shown, the questions from the audience were those quarter-scale models, or those explosions, was that 300 frames per second? How many matte paintings did you do? They were all questions from knowledge. When I got up to answer the questions for Tron, no one raised their hand. And I was shocked, and I finally said, there must be a question. Finally, someone raised their hand and said, what kind of camera did you use? Oh, we used that new Martian camera we'd imported from outer space, you know. No, I explained how we shot it in 70, and we had multiple animation cameras and photo roto machines, and altogether about 25 cameras. And then, no more questions. Finally, somebody raised their hand and said, did you make any models? I said, yes, we did. We made study models because we had to make physical set pieces covered in black to match some of the background, for example, the bridge of the Solar Sailor. So they were self-matting. And so I said we made study models, but we made the models in the movie. There were 2 different major computer animation companies, Magi Cinephavision from Elmsford, New York, and Information International Incorporated here in Los Angeles. Information International made polygonal models, and Magi Cinephavision made their models by what we call Boolean modeling, where you're...
All right, wait, you used the Boolean word. We gotta move on.
Oh, sorry about that.
That's okay, you used the Boolean. Harrison.
So they add and subtract.
Well, was that log or linear?
So hang on, was it raster graphics or vector graphics? So this is where I get lost. Wait a second.
Ray
I'm
tracing.
representing
This is
the
what the
audience.
Academy was feeling when they were explaining the
I'm
movie.
representing the audience here. I just got lost.
So-
I'm representing the Academy. Wait, I want to say something. Special Achievement Academy Award for Tron. Let's hear it. Deserves it? Let's get going. It's the beginning of the campaign right here. Let's go. All right,
But it was all done
what
by
is- We got
robots.
time for just one more
So
thing.
we were
At the
asked
very
2
least, you made it
questions,
look
and I
better.
went backstage, and I felt this hostility from the audience, and my good friend Richard Edlund, who 5 Academy Awards for special effects, I said, Richard, what the hell's going on? It was so weird. And he said, well, I think they think you cheated. I said, well, what do you mean by that? And he said, I think they think the computer literally did it all. Oh, You type out on a keyboard, I want a model that looks like it was made by Sid Mead, traveling left to right in the frame.
So we have time just to get a comment from everybody else here. What has the credit of having worked on Tron and being a key person on the creation of this film, has it meant to you in the context of your career? Harrison, John, Glenn, just give us a take on that.
What was the question?
What is Tron?
So
what
first you take the backlight. It was so unique. It was so crazy, and it just kind of willed itself into being. And I wasn't surprised when I was disappointed when the Academy didn't acknowledge it, because the Academy in those days was basically white, old. Some things never change. And these guys, had worked on movies that weren't done this way. And they were just stunned. They didn't know what to think about it. And I can't blame them. It was revolutionary. It was crazy. And they hated it. It's like, what is this?
People hate brand new.
Yeah.
Especially when you do it at a high level.
And they're all so young. All the people who worked on it.
Look at that picture on the screen there.
Yeah.
That's us in the day.
As the publicist on the film, you're trying to get people to strike a pose. This is the crew picture, and you got one guy up there going, I'm going to pose like this.
Yeah, that's him.
This was my challenge with Harrison.
Joking me with film.
And people say, well, back in those days, it was a man's world. Well, look at the number of women that were on the. I didn't care if you were this, that,
John
or
and Glenn.
If you could do it, yeah, you're hired.
Well, and to Mike's question, Harrison, the thing is, we did everything that worked. We put everything together, solved the problems, as Richard said, by hand. It was using early CGI. It was a little bit, like I say, like AI creeping up, but boy, it was so slow and hard to do, 48 hours sometimes to create one frame for a background. The technology was slow, but it was the beginning of cobbling together CGI in a meaningful way. It took off from there. But I think, for me going forward, it was the part that we just made everything work. Whatever you needed to do, you moved on and found a solution for it, as everybody does in their life with everything. So
But at the same
it was
time,
loads of fun to do. It was not a drag at all.
We failed so many times. I would go home and go, oh God, what have we got ourselves into? But
Greatness.
as
That's
I
what
said
greatness
before,
feels like, Harrison.
That's where I came in. I got a call from a friend of mine from Disney, and he said, hey, we got this new project coming up. I'm working for Disney. Oh boy, I'm thinking Mary Poppins. I said, what's it called? He said, Tron. I said, I'm in. Literally, he said Tron, and I thought, that stands for electronic, which means they're using CGI. It's Disney, I'm in. Literally, one phone call, one word, I was on board. So now I'm on it. We're doing all this stuff, and now we're working late night. And as he said, 40 passes, 80 passes. I was night shift supervisor, and everybody here, as he said, what have I gotten myself into? Everybody learned very quickly. I had no problem at calling at 3 in the morning going, I'm on pass 37, I don't understand this. So everybody learned, take your count sheets home because you're going to get a call.
Oh my God, gentlemen, thank you so much. What a great first half of the panel. We loved hearing all about Tron and your work on it. It was amazing. Thank you.
Let's hear it for Glenn Campbell, John Shealy, Harrison Allen Shaw, Richard Wynn Taylor. Thank you.
Can someone please give me a to the butt grab job?
Yeah.
Thank you all for coming.
Okay, so Carol Green was a DGA trainee. Tron was her first job in the entertainment industry, and so she and I started on that film. And I think this acting thing might work out for him. Tron himself, Bruce Boxleitner. Yeah.
I wish I could walk out with the swag that Bruce just walked out right now. It just said, I'm Tron. I know it, you know it.
Bruce used to read a lot of Louis L'Amour novels on the set, and so I saw him bringing the cowboy to that character as he would walk in to do scenes. But before that, let's start at the beginning with Donald.
Yeah.
How did you convince Disney to do a film using computers to make the animation when you're in the world center of hand-drawn animation and all of that legacy? How did you sell Disney on doing this movie?
Well, at the time, they had just released a movie called The Black Hole.
Close to your mouth. Close to your mouth.
You got a black hole fan.
They just released a movie called The Black Hole, which was kind of an outgrowth of Star Wars. And they had a new executive there, Tom Wilhite, and he was looking for something new and interesting. And so we had developed the script, we had the special effects, and we had some samples of computer animation. And we also had another studio that was interested, and we let him know that if he wasn't going to buy, another studio would. So
that's a boss move. That's awesome.
So a lot of studios buy stuff out of fear rather than they're afraid of someone else doing the movie.
Well, was there like a moment where during that conversation they were just kind of, once you told them, hey, buy it or somebody else will, did they jump on it right away, or were they just kind of like, yeah, we'll take a chance? And you said, you better take that chance.
They jumped on it right away, actually, but before they committed to production, they made us do like an effects reel or sample reel. So they wanted to make sure what we were saying, that we knew what we were talking about, which, by the way, we didn't, but we figured, I figured out if we could get the plane in the air, we'd figure out how to land it.
It sounds like you were figuring out how to build it when you got the plane in the air.
Bruce, how did you first get notified and cast in the film? What was that like for you?
Don, was it Pam Polifroni? Was she the casting agent back then?
Yes,
right.
yes.
Well, I had done Gunsmoke and a couple other things for her. She must have submitted me or something, I don't know, but I was supposed to come in, but I was doing a television western out in Arizona, and my agent sent a script, and I'm sitting there reading this thing, and I was actually sitting on a horse, waiting for the action, and I pull this thing out of the saddlebag and I'm reading Tron. I am so far away from the Tron world in this thing. I'm in this Old West mode and I'm reading that. I said, I don't understand a thing that's about. Anyway, no cell phones and stuff like that, so I had to wait to get back to the hotel later that night, and I called John Crosby and my agent at the time, and I asked him what and said, well, they'd like to see you. Now, maybe, I don't know, maybe there were things before that, but they'd like to see you. And when I got back into town, I did come out to Disney, and I think Steven showed me some, you said you had done some footage or something, right? Yeah.
Yes.
And I kind of got the idea. I said, well, it kind of looks like a Star Wars, but only you're inside of a video game. That's kind of cool. I actually was one of the 1,000 guys that went up for Luke Skywalker as well, so I said, oh, I didn't get that one. If they're interested in this one. But I was thrilled. I had heard that Jeff Bridges was already on this thing, and I really admired, you admire your peers, and I always followed his work, and I said, well, I'd really like to work with him. And it was very exciting when I finally kind of understood and saw it physically, and you probably know more about how I got on the damn thing than I do, but...
Carol, how did you, this was your first experience on a film, and did you think that every film was going to be shot in black and white on 70 millimeter IMAX or Vision?
Absolutely. It was my first, actually it was my first special effects movie, so it was completely different animal, and just in terms of how, we would shoot, this much work in a day, whereas when you do TV, you do like 8, 9, 10 pages. So, and it's like, yay, we did an 1/8 of a page of work today. It's just like, wow, this is a whole different pace. Okay. So, so it's just putting all those, it's like making a quilt out of tiny pieces that you put together. So that was the thing that was really different for me, just in how slowly and how meticulously everything went together.
Yeah, if this was one of my first experiences, like in the film industry, and I worked on Tron, you couldn't tell me nothing for any other movie. I worked on this. We made it up as long as we went. But this film just, like you said, you were flying the plane and learning how to build it on the way up. There's so much things that you didn't know. You were just flying by the seat of your pants. But how do you budget for something like that? We hear about budgets all the time, but do you say, oh yeah, this in-house world that we have to build from scratch through digital animation, $5?
How we budgeted it is we kind of backed into the number. We felt that Disney had an appetite to make this film for a certain number, so that's the budget we gave them. And then, and then as we went on, the budget started to increase. The head of the studio at the time, his name was Ron Miller. He had married Disney's daughter, and he was a linebacker for the Los Angeles Rams. And he was also a linebacker for USC. So on a Saturday, if USC would win and the Los Angeles Rams would win, we'd go into his office, Ron Miller's office, and we'd show him some slides of what the picture looked like, and it was easy to get the money out of it.
This has got to be the best fake it till you make it story I've ever heard.
It was in between him reading the sports pages of the LA Times. So
I got to say something about Ron. We used to kind of laugh about Ron during the times of Tron, but Ron treated the studio like family. And that film wouldn't have been able to run the gauntlet if it hadn't been for Ron Miller looking out for Donald, Harrison, Richard, Steven, and being in a good mood on Mondays after the Rams won. But he was forgiving in that way. We were all family. Once he committed to the film, he stuck with us. And my appreciation for Ron has only grown over the years because he was kind of an unsung hero. Question for Bruce. You walk onto this set, so you're out there in the Western with the cactus and the checkered tablecloths and the Conestoga wagons, and you walk onto a set and there's nothing. What are you acting with? What are you using? How does that work?
Whoa. Well, I had come from the theater, and I kind of likened it to being on a theatrical stage like this. And for the audience, oftentimes in a play, you have to create something that isn't there for them to see. That's through your acting ability. And I thought, this is something which I would really have to use my imagination. Now, Steven did have some storyboards. That was my first experience with storyboards. So, Cindy and the rest of us, we could look at this thing and say, okay, we're crawling up a huge, pipe or something. It was actually this black platform that Cindy and I were crawling all over the place when we were being chased by the recognizers. And it was kind of, I would liken it probably what silent film acting was. Okay, look over your left shoulder. It's coming down closer to you. You're afraid, things like that. It's over your left shoulder here. Here it is, in fact, But it was weird. But we got into it. And we had a ball, we were wearing these tights with motocross helmet and shoulder things and everything. And I had to train with a guy named Sam Schatz, who was a professional Frisbee thrower.
That's the thing.
I had no idea there were professional Frisbee throwers, right? I mean, and there he came out, and we were out in this horse corral I had at my place, and it was deep sand, so it was kind of great exercise. And he ran me through that, throwing that thing at me, dodging it, and doing all kinds of things. And I had to learn to throw a Frisbee pretty well, I think.
All part, I really want everyone to understand this. So you watch all these like behind the scenes with all these actors in the green screen and they're acting against nothing. Bruce was the first one to do it. Like, you're the first one to do it.
Yeah, it was.
It's gotta feel amazing. It's gotta feel amazing.
It is. To this day, I guess there's sort of ignorance is bliss. You know? I mean,
take that to a whole new level.
I had no idea what I was doing, but you know, I just felt the whole thing. I felt like we were part of something. We were onto something new. I had never experienced this, and you just had a sense, though. There was like all pioneering efforts. Well, it may fail, but there's something about this.
So
as I heard Richard and Harrison and Stephen certainly explaining this and the process and the amount of lighting we had. We had banks of light that were so huge. Am I right, Mike?
Yeah, yeah.
I think there was a brownout in Burbank one night when we threw the switch on this thing. And
so he's getting money from the studio. He's acting in a vacuum. You, Carol, are doing what?
I'll tell you what she was doing to me. Bruce, they need you on the set. I'm not talking about later. I'm now.
Yeah.
Get on the set now. She was always chasing after us, you know, trying to find us, you know.
So she was doing her best.
You guys were
Keep
very
Jeff
good.
Bridges off the video game machines. If you remember, we had video game machines on the set. That didn't last long. Get Jeff on the set. Jeff. Where's Jeff? Anybody seen Jeff? Jeff! What? You're not, get on set. I'm doing research, he said.
I think it was Space Invaders, right?
Space Invaders.
Yes.
Taking
No,
that
no,
machine
it
further.
was Battle Zone.
But Carol, go.
Battle Zone.
It was Battle Zone, Space Invaders.
Galaga.
What was the? I forget.
Was it
the
Galaga?
Caterpillar.
What's that?
Galaga?
Centipede. That's what.
Centipede,
Yeah.
Centipede, yeah.
Centipede was a big one.
Well, it kind of distracted though, and we had to take those games off the sound stage because half the crew was on them all the time.
So that was your Carol Green impression, what you just did, is that right? So Carol, what else besides chasing after Bruce and Jeff?
She ordered me around a lot.
Yeah. Well, we had to order. You know, it was always fun trying to convince people before cell phones that it was really going to be a fun day to run around in tights on black velvet and not know what it is exactly. So we had, every once in a while we'd have, and it was mostly guys, so they were used to being in a position where, you know, it was the women, where this time it was mostly the guys that were, you know, in the leotards, and they didn't like it, some of them, and they wouldn't, you know, a couple of them would say, you know, I'm not gonna do this gig, sorry, and they would go home, some of the extras.
Did they go home in the tights? Just all.
Oh no, they saw what the other people were wearing, like they'd look at Bruce and go, oh hell no. They would go home.
I thought I looked kind of good. I don't know.
That's why you're Tron.
I do know that we did, I think we were, Jeff and I and company, all the rest of the guys were we were in the forefront of the male thong.
Yeah, I would get phone calls from women on the lot after Bruce would walk just to the commissary, so I could almost time the rings on my phone, like, who was that guy and what was he wearing, and how do I get to meet him? So, Bruce, I booked all of those phone calls, don't worry about it. So we have a guest who wants to chime in here, so we're going to roll video. The guest is visible with video, I believe. So if you want to roll video backstage, when people ask you favorite memory from the film, what's your response to that? Carol, let's start with you on that.
Okay, I've been thinking about this one. This is a tough one. Well, for one thing, it was my very last show as a trainee, and they gave me one more day beyond that so I could finish up and not have to grovel for that last trainee day, which people sometimes get stuck in. It could take you months to get that last day. So they gave me the last day, and it ended the day after my birthday, which was great. I just remember also just how nice everybody was. I mean, I know you're looking at me going, I'm not just saying this because I don't have to after all these years. But, you know.
40 years now, come on, you can say it.
No, but I'm telling you, you know,
it.
I'm telling you, after 40 years of who I've worked with, some people, it's like, you guys were really amazing and you guys were really sweet. And this is going bad.
40 years worth of people.
No, you guys were amazing. And it was a great project to work like the last project to work on, and just because it was a big effects thing, it's given me building blocks that I still use. And I mean, the next thing I'm working on is going to be a big special effects project, and you know, I'm going to get on the phone tomorrow and say, hey, we got to start storyboarding or we're going to be in trouble. You know, and I wouldn't have known that had it not been for Tron.
Yeah, can't tell her nothing.
Donald, you go next.
For me, the interesting thing about Tron is how it affected the social and historical and the present future of where we are today. The electronic world in Tron became the metaverse. Characters in the electronic world became avatars. In 1982, there was a guy named Hal Finney who worked on the Tron video game, and he was the first recipient of Bitcoin. And he probably worked under a Japanese pseudonym, and so he actually created Bitcoin. So there's several incidences like this. In Tron, there's the mainframe computer versus the personal computer, which is prophetic in the sense that it showed what Web3 is today, and that the community is part of the future. So these are the things that I think of. There's obviously the computer animation became a staple in Pixar and live action films, but these are the things that foretold the future of Tron.
And you're working on a metaverse project now, correct? You were telling me?
Yes, it's called Cryptosaurs.ai, and it's about, in the not too distant future, we imagine dinosaurs come back to the planet to help mankind deal with the environment and with each other and not become extinct the way they did.
Cool. Nice story. Cryptosaurs. Sounds good.
Cryptosaurs.ai.
Cryptosaurs.ai. Everybody remember that? Just plug it into your phone right now. Bruce, memory of Tron.
Ooh. Well, there's so many of them. I do want to bring up one fellow that is not with us here anymore, and that is David Warner. I was hoping, he was going to make this event. A man that was totally inspiring. So I answered that question, Mike, is that the friendships I made in this film, when you're doing sort of a pioneering effort, you're kind of all pulling together to try to pull this thing off, in whatever department. All the way, Carol certainly, and Donald and his, and all of us added to that effort that I believe is amazing, because it is the science fiction that we're actually living, like you were explaining. We're actually living what this was. And look at video games today, everything. But for me, it was the friendships, certainly with Jeff. He still calls me Tronster, and I call him Flinster. And, and thank God he pulled out of the horror that he had just gone through with cancer and COVID. And so good to see him back on the screen again. And I want to thank Steven Lisberger too, along with Donald. Steven's genius. And this thing, I've done quite a bit of science fiction since, and I got my training to do Babylon 5 and other things. I literally got my training on Tron. So I owe a great deal to this film. And there'll never be another one like it. I look around all the films that are made now, and there's no one that has captured that particular look, that world of the game grid yet. Even Tron Legacy, which was brilliant too. But this one is so unique.
So we want to finish on a note of looking forward. So a lot of this has been nostalgia, looking backward. So we're going to bring out Scott Drake from WDI, an executive at Imagineering, who's going to look into the future, the not so distant future, and give you a preview of what's going on down in Orlando.
We'll give it up for Scott, everybody.
Scott.
Thank you. All right, thank you.
Yeah.
I do. I gotta tell you, I am so excited to be here. I've just been backstage thanking every one of the panelists. I feel like I'm speaking for all designers when I say thank you. It's been such an inspiration for so many of us. And I also, in design school, I think I studied Sid Mead more than anyone else. So I definitely love this film. I have one memory, maybe some of you guys will as well. An experiential memory from a long time ago of a Tron scene on the People Mover here at Disneyland. Anyone remember that? Thank you. I had to recently look it up on YouTube just to make sure I wasn't making that up, and it was pretty profound. But stepping back, in 2009, I was asked to be the creative director for an all-new Tomorrowland in Shanghai to an all-new audience. And as you can see here, we were searching for stories to tell, aesthetics, and it was about that time I was invited to come to the studio lot and see one of the next projects they were working on, Tron Legacy, and see some of their visual development. I gotta say, not only was I blown away, but instantly I went back to the drawing board and knew what I had to do. We had to immerse guests in the grid, and we had the opportunity to immerse guests in the grid like we never had before. Literally using all of Imagineering's tools and technologies to deliver something truly unique to Shanghai. But first, we had to scan people into the world. So, after the events of Tron Legacy, Sam Flynn's mind was open to the possibilities, and he wanted to invite all guests to come in and experience Tron, almost like a celebration like the Olympics, bringing programs and users together. Programs may not have agreed with that, but that was his plan. And we wanted to scan people in and have as much time in the grid as possible. And that's exactly what we did, is we scanned guests in the beginning of the queue to be in that, stylized, mesmerizing, mysterious world of Tron and show that power surging. As we walk into the load station, it gives us previews of what's to come. There's a race view overhead showing us the game in front of us. But of course, we have to roll in the Tron light cycle.
Yeah.